The outcast of Lumina. The crystalline spires of Luminous City gleamed under the light of 3 moons, their surfaces refracting prismatic patterns across the capital. Within the highest tower of the royal citadel, Princess Ilara stood alone at her window, watching her people move in perfect synchronization below. The Luminary were known throughout the galaxy for their remarkable telepathic abilities, a collective consciousness that linked their entire species in a harmonious network of shared thoughts and emotions. All except Ilara. Born to the royal bloodline with a rare neural divergence, Ilara's mind remained silent, disconnected from the collective consciousness that defined her species. The royal physicians had named her condition telepathic isolation syndrome, but most luminaries simply referred to her as the silenced one in hushed tones when they thought she couldn't hear. "Your Highness," came a soft voice from the doorway. Tav, her attendant, bowed low as he entered. Though his silver-scaled face remained impassive, Ilara could read the pity in his iridescent eyes. After 16 years as her caretaker, Tav was the closest thing to a friend she had. "The High Council has completed their deliberations regarding your future," he said, his melodic voice faltering slightly. Ilara turned from the window, her translucent skin shifting from azure to a pale lavender. The luminary equivalent of resignation. "They're sending me away, aren't they?" Tav nodded solemnly. "To Nexus Station. The Council believes it would be beneficial for someone of your unique condition to serve as an observer in a multi-species environment." "You mean they found a place far enough away to hide their embarrassment," Ilara said, her voice lacking the bitterness one might expect. She had long accepted her place, or lack thereof, among her people. "You leave in 3 cycles, on your 25th naming day." Ilara nodded, turning back to the window. Below, a celebration was beginning, the annual Festival of Unity, where thousands of luminary would join their minds in a spectacular telepathic performance. As always, Ilara would watch from above, an eternal observer to a connection she could never experience. That night, as the 3 moons of Lumina aligned in a rare celestial event, Ilara packed her few belongings. She left behind the royal regalia, the ornate headdresses, and flowing ceremonial robes that marked her as royalty. What use were symbols of status among her people when she lacked the very essence of what made them luminary? She kept only 3 items of personal significance: a hologram of her mother, who had died shortly after Ilara's birth, a strange metallic artifact her old teacher Velen had given her, from Earth, he had said, where diversity of thought is celebrated, and a small data crystal containing the only book ever written for luminary children, a relic from before their evolution into a telepathic species. 3 cycles later, Ilara stood in the royal hangar as attendants loaded her modest belongings onto a sleek diplomatic vessel. Emperor Talon, her father, made a brief appearance, a political necessity rather than a paternal farewell. "You will represent the royal house on Nexus Station," he said formally, his mind clearly elsewhere, engaged in countless telepathic conversations with advisors across the planet. "Ambassador Vex will provide guidance on your duties." There was no embrace, no words of comfort or promises to visit. Ilara had expected nothing more. As the only luminary unable to connect with the collective, she was an anomaly, a reminder of imperfection in their otherwise flawless society. "I will honor our people, Father," she replied with the customary response, though they both knew her presence would be minimized in all official capacities. The journey to Nexus Station took 8 standard days through hyperspace. During the voyage, Ambassador Vex barely acknowledged Ilara's presence, communicating with her only when absolutely necessary, and through verbal means, a form of interaction the luminary considered primitive and inefficient. When they finally arrived, Ilara gasped at her first sight of Nexus Station. Unlike the elegant, crystalline architecture of Lumina, the station was a magnificent chaos, a spinning wheel of metal and composite materials, with ships of countless designs docking along its circumference. Through the viewport, Ilara could see beings of various species hurrying through the transparent corridors, a dizzying variety of forms and colors. "Your quarters are in the diplomatic sector," Ambassador Vex informed her curtly as they disembarked. "You will assist with translating luminary concepts for non-telepathic species when required. Otherwise, remain inconspicuous." With that, he glided away to join a group of high-ranking luminary officials, leaving Ilara alone with her belongings in the bustling arrival terminal. For the first time in her life, Ilara felt a strange sensation blossoming within her, not the connection she had always yearned for, but something else entirely. Here, among the cacophony of voices and the crowd of beings who communicated through sound and gesture rather than thought, her disability was suddenly normal. As she stood contemplating this revelation, a collision sent her stumbling backward. Her cases clattered to the floor as she nearly lost her balance. "Stars and satellites. I'm so sorry," came a warm, energetic voice. Ilara looked up to see a human woman with rich brown skin and a halo of tight black curls. She wore a navy blue uniform with silver piping and the insignia of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. "Entirely my fault," the woman continued, helping gather Ilara's scattered belongings. "I was reading reports while walking, bad habit my mother always warned me about." She looked up and her dark eyes widened slightly. "Oh, you're luminary. I don't believe I've met one of your people who wasn't surrounded by an entourage of officials." "I'm somewhat different from most luminary," Ilara replied, accepting the case the human handed to her. "Captain Maya Rise, Earth Diplomatic Corps," the woman said, extending her hand before quickly withdrawing it. "Sorry, I forgot luminary don't typically engage in physical greetings." To Maya's surprise, Ilara reached out and carefully took her hand. "Princess Ilara of House Talon, and I have no objection to physical greetings. As I said, I'm different." Maya's eyebrows rose at the title. "Princess, I wasn't informed of royal visitors to the station." "That's likely because my presence isn't considered significant enough to announce," Ilara said with a candor that seemed to surprise the human. "I was sent here because I lack the telepathic abilities all other luminary possess. My presence on our homeworld is problematic." Instead of the awkward pity Ilara had come to expect, the human's face lit up with curiosity. "Fascinating. So you communicate entirely through verbal means, like humans do?" "Yes. A lifelong disability to my people, but perhaps not such a disadvantage here." Maya grinned. "Definitely not a disadvantage. In fact, you might be the first luminary I've had a conversation with who wasn't simultaneously having 5 other telepathic discussions and barely paying attention to my words." For the first time in longer than she could remember, Ilara felt her skin shift to a warm gold. The luminary expression of amusement and pleasure. "Are you headed to the diplomatic sector?" Maya asked, gesturing toward one of the station's radial corridors. "I'm going that way myself. I'd be happy to show you around, if you'd like." "I would appreciate that," Ilara replied, surprised by her own eagerness. As they walked, Maya pointed out various features of the station. The central garden sphere, where plants from dozens of worlds created a stunning botanical collection. The market ring where traders from across the galaxy sold exotic goods, and the observation deck with its unparalleled view of the nearby nebula. "How long have you been stationed here?" Ilara asked, finding herself genuinely interested in another person for perhaps the first time in her life. "Almost 2 standard years," Maya replied. "Earth is relatively new to the Galactic Concord, so we're still building our diplomatic presence. I serve as liaison between human traders and the various species who frequent Nexus." "Do you find it difficult, being so far from your homeworld?" Maya considered this. "Sometimes, but humans are adaptable. It's kind of our specialty. And the station has a decent-sized human community. We get together for movie nights and holidays." She glanced sideways at Ilara. "You're welcome to join us sometime, if you'd like." Ilara felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest at the casual inclusion. "That's very kind of you." They reached the diplomatic sector, where Maya helped Ilara locate her assigned quarters, a modest suite with a viewport overlooking the docking ring. "Well, Princess Ilara, it was a pleasure literally running into you," Maya said with a grin. "Here's my contact code if you need anything or just want someone to have lunch with." After Maya left, Ilara stood in her new quarters, looking out at the stars. For the first time since she could remember, the silence in her mind didn't feel like a void. Instead, it felt like possibility. The following weeks brought a dramatic shift in Ilara's existence. Where on Lumina she had been isolated and ignored, on Nexus Station she found herself uniquely valuable. Ambassador Vex and the other luminary diplomats struggled to communicate effectively with non-telepathic species. Concepts that were instantly understood through telepathic sharing had to be laboriously explained through verbal language, a task they found frustrating and beneath their dignity. Ilara, however, had spent a lifetime translating her thoughts into words. What the other luminary saw as her greatest weakness became her greatest strength. She was increasingly called upon to explain luminary perspectives to human, Trividi, and Corvin representatives, bridging cultural gaps that had long been sources of misunderstanding. One afternoon, as Ilara finished mediating a particularly complex trade negotiation between luminary crystal artisans and human collectors, Maya approached her with an impressed smile. "You have a gift," the human said as they walked together toward the station's central promenade. "I've never seen a luminary explain quantum resonance harmonics so clearly." The ambassador looked ready to implode from frustration. Ilara's skin rippled with blue-gold patterns, her equivalent of a blush. "When you spend your life on the outside looking in, you learn to observe patterns others take for granted." "Exactly." Maya's eyes lit up. "That's something humans understand well. On Earth, we have a concept called neurodiversity, the idea that different brain structures and functions aren't defects, but variations that bring unique perspectives and abilities. Your species celebrates neural differences." Ilara asked, the concept so foreign to her experience that she struggled to comprehend it. "We're learning to," Maya admitted. "It hasn't always been that way, but we've come to recognize that some of our greatest innovations came from minds that processed information differently from the majority." As they reached the promenade's observation lounge, they paused to watch a spectacular stellar flare from the nearby star. In the radiant light, Ilara studied Maya's profile and felt a strange new emotion stirring within her. Not the connection she had always longed for with her own kind, but something different, something uniquely her own. "On Lumina," she said quietly, "there is no word for friend in the traditional sense. When all minds are connected, the concept becomes redundant." Maya turned to her, the starlight reflecting in her dark eyes. "And what about now, here on Nexus?" Ilara's translucent skin shifted to a deep, warm amber, a color she had rarely experienced before. "Now I believe I understand what the word means." That night, lying in her quarters and looking out at the stars, Ilara realized that for the first time in her life, she did not feel incomplete. The silence in her mind, once a source of shame and isolation, now felt like a space filled with potential, with choices that were entirely her own. What neither Ilara nor Maya could have known was how crucial this friendship would soon become, not just to them, but to the entire station and beyond. For across the galaxy, a crisis was brewing that would test the limits of both luminary telepathy and human adaptability, and only their unique partnership would hold the key to salvation. The crisis at Nexus. 3 months after Ilara's arrival at Nexus Station, the first signs of trouble appeared. Subtle at first, minor fluctuations in power systems, small navigational errors in the automated guidance systems, occasional glitches in the environmental controls. The station's diverse engineering teams investigated but found no obvious cause for concern. "Probably just cosmic radiation interference," explained Chief Engineer Dorn, a stocky Corvin with steel-gray fur, at the station's weekly administrative meeting. "We're passing through a particularly active region of the nebula." Ilara, now serving as the official luminary cultural liaison, sat quietly observing the discussion. Though she had no technical expertise, something about the pattern of malfunctions troubled her. They seemed too deliberate. Across the table, Maya caught her eye and raised an eyebrow questioningly. In the months since their first meeting, they had developed an almost intuitive understanding of each other's expressions. After the meeting, Maya approached her. "You had that look again, the one where you're seeing something the rest of us are missing." Ilara's skin rippled with patterns of deep blue, her expression of concern. "The malfunctions don't seem random to me. They follow a pattern similar to luminary meditation exercises, rhythmic, sequential, building toward something." Maya frowned. "That's odd. You think there's a luminary connection?" "I don't know," Ilara admitted. "It may be nothing more than an overactive imagination." But 2 days later, it became clear that something serious was indeed happening. During the station's artificial night cycle, all systems simultaneously shut down for exactly 7.2 seconds before restarting. In those brief moments of darkness and silence, panic erupted across the station. An emergency council was convened the following morning, with representatives from all major species present. Ambassador Vex and 3 other high-ranking luminary officials sat together, their faces impassive as they communicated telepathically among themselves. "This was no technical malfunction," stated Station Director Lyon, a stern woman from one of Earth's lunar colonies. "Our security team has confirmed that the shutdown was triggered by an external signal. We believe it was a warning, or a demonstration of capability." "A prelude to an attack?" asked the Dravidi representative, his feathered crest rising in alarm. "Possibly," Director Lyon acknowledged, "or a demand of some kind." Ambassador Vex spoke, his melodious voice carrying easily despite its softness. "The Luminary Science Council has detected unusual energy patterns emanating from within the nebula. They appear to be artificial in nature, possibly originating from ancient technology." At this, Ilara felt a strange resonance in her mind, not the telepathic connection she had always lacked, but something else, a faint echo, like hearing music from another room. "Ambassador," she said, speaking up in such a formal gathering for the first time, "these energy patterns, do they pulse in sequences of 7, with harmonics that shift in a clockwise spectral progression?" The ambassador's iridescent eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Yes. How could you possibly know that?" "Because I can feel them," Ilara replied, her skin paling to an almost translucent white with shock. "Not through telepathy, but differently, like vibrations against my consciousness." The room fell silent. The luminary officials exchanged troubled glances, their telepathic conversation almost palpable in its intensity. "Impossible," one of them finally stated. "Princess Ilara's neural pathways are incapable of receiving any form of telepathic or psionic impression. This has been thoroughly documented." Maya stood up, her protective instincts clearly triggered by the dismissive tone. "With respect, perhaps you've documented what she cannot do, but have you ever explored what she uniquely can do?" "Captain Reyes," Director Lyon warned, "this is hardly the time for—" "Actually," Ilara interrupted, her voice stronger than anyone had ever heard it, "I believe it's exactly the time." She turned to Ambassador Vex. "The ancient technology you mentioned, could it predate luminary telepathic evolution?" The ambassador's skin flickered with patterns of surprise. "The Science Council believes it may date back to the precursor civilization, from whom our species evolved." "How did you?" "The artifact my teacher gave me," Ilara explained. "The one said to be from Earth. It's not human at all, is it? It's precursor technology." Reluctantly, Ambassador Vex nodded. "Velen had unconventional theories about your condition. He believed your neural structure might resemble that of pre-telepathic luminary, closer to our evolutionary ancestors who communicated through methods now lost to us." Maya leaned forward intently. "So while modern luminary evolved for telepathic communication, Ilara's brain might be receptive to these older patterns. A fascinating theory. The Dravidi representative interjected. But how does this help with our immediate crisis? Before anyone could respond, the station's alarms blared again. This time, the shutdown lasted for 14.4 seconds, exactly double the previous duration. It's counting up, Ilara whispered as the lights came back on. And each time, the pattern grows more complex. It's communicating. In the chaotic aftermath, a decision was made. A joint team would investigate the source of the signals within the nebula, a team including luminary scientists, station security personnel, and, at Maya's insistent recommendation, Princess Ilara. Ambassador Vex protested vehemently. This is absurd. The princess has no scientific training, no experience with potential threats, and no way to communicate with the rest of the luminary team. Which is precisely why she needs to go, Maya countered. She's perceiving something none of the rest of you can detect. And Captain Tyrell's scout ship has advanced sensor arrays that might help amplify whatever she's receiving. Director Lyon made the final decision. Captain Rise will accompany Princess Ilara as Earth's representative. They depart in 6 hours. As they prepared for the mission, Maya found Ilara in her quarters, meditating before her viewport with the strange artifact. A metallic sphere etched with spiraling patterns, cradled in her hands. Are you sure about this? Maya asked gently. No one would blame you for staying behind. Ilara opened her eyes, which now shimmered with an unusual luminescence. For the first time in my life, my difference isn't a disability. It's essential. How could I possibly refuse? The scout ship entered the nebula cautiously, its shields modified to withstand the unique radiation. On the bridge, Ilara sat with the artifact on a console before her eyes closed in concentration. Around her, luminary scientists monitored equipment while communicating telepathically, occasionally casting skeptical glances in her direction. Maya stood protectively nearby, watching as Ilara's skin shifted through colors and patterns she had never displayed before, vibrant swirls of gold, azure, and violet that seemed to flow like liquid light beneath her translucent surface. We're approaching the coordinates, announced Captain Tyrell, a veteran Corvin pilot. Scanners are detecting a massive structure ahead, approximately 3.2 kilometers in diameter. As they drew closer, a colossal ring-shaped object emerged from the nebula's gases, ancient beyond imagining, its surface covered in the same spiral patterns as Ilara's artifact. Suddenly, Ilara gasped, her eyes flying open. It's awakening fully now. The pattern is complete. The next shutdown will be permanent. What? Maya moved to her side. How do you know? The sequence, Ilara explained urgently. It's been testing systems, learning our technology. The next pulse will disable Nexus Station completely. Life support, everything. The luminary scientists exchanged alarmed telepathic communications before one spoke aloud for Maya's benefit. Our readings confirm a massive energy buildup within the structure. The princess appears to be correct. How long do we have? Captain Tyrell demanded. Minutes at most, another scientist replied. We must retreat immediately. No. Ilara stood, the artifact now glowing in her hands. I can communicate with it. I can make it stop. That's impossible, objected the lead luminary scientist. Even our collective telepathy cannot interface with technology. I'm not using telepathy, Ilara said. I'm using something older. She turned to Maya, her eyes reflecting the swirling colors of the nebula. I need your help. The artifact responds to emotional states as well as logical patterns. Luminaries suppress emotions in favor of pure thought, but humans feel everything intensely. Maya finished with a nod of understanding. What do you need me to do? Hold the artifact with me. Think about connection, about bridges between different worlds, about finding value in differences. As Maya placed her hands alongside Ilara's on the glowing sphere, the ship's sensors registered an enormous energy spike from the ancient structure. On the view screen, They could see pulses of light beginning to travel outward, heading toward Nexus Station. Ilara closed her eyes, her skin now blazing with light that seemed to flow between her and the artifact. Through their connected hands, Maya felt a strange sensation, not thoughts being shared, but emotions, impressions, flowing both ways. "It's not a weapon," Ilara whispered, her voice sounding distant. "It's a repository, a library of the precursor's knowledge. It activated when it sensed luminary telepathy nearby. But the modern telepathic patterns are incompatible, damaging." It was defending itself. Through their joined connection, Maya understood something profound. The ancient device had been designed for a different kind of communication, one that modern luminary had evolved beyond. Only Ilara, with her unique neural structure, could bridge the gap between past and present. On the view screen, the pulses of energy changed direction, flowing back into the ancient ring. "She's doing it," breathed one of the scientists in astonishment. "She's communicating with precursor technology." For several tense minutes, Ilara remained in deep communion with the artifact and its parent structure. When she finally opened her eyes, they shimmered with an inner light that gradually faded to their normal state. "It's done," she said simply. "The repository has recognized us as descendants of its creators. It will no longer interfere with our technology." The return to Nexus Station was met with relief and celebration. The crisis had been averted, and preliminary analysis of the data Ilara had retrieved promised revolutionary advances in understanding luminary origins and evolution. In the aftermath, Ilara found herself in a position she had never imagined possible, valued, respected, and for the first time in her life, truly seen. A week after their return, a formal reception was held in the station's Grand Hall. Representatives from all species gathered to honor those who had prevented the disaster. To Ilara's surprise, Emperor Talon himself had arrived from Lumina to attend. As she stood nervously at the entrance, Maya appeared beside her in a formal Earth diplomatic uniform. "Ready for this?" she asked with an encouraging smile. "Not remotely," Ilara admitted, her skin shifting through nervous patterns of blue and silver. "Just remember," Maya said, taking her hand, "every species in that room now understands something the luminary are just beginning to learn. That different isn't deficient. It's just different. And sometimes it's exactly what's needed." Together, they entered the hall to thunderous applause. Later that evening, Ilara found herself face to face with her father for the first time since leaving Lumina. Emperor Talon's expression was unreadable, his mental communications with other luminary officials constant as always. "Father," she greeted him formally. To her surprise, he dismissed his attendants with a gesture and focused solely on her, something she could not remember him ever doing before. "The Luminary Science Council has requested that you lead the research team studying the precursor repository," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of uncertainty. "They believe your unique neural structure will be essential to understanding our evolutionary history." Ilara felt a complex mixture of emotions: vindication, pride, lingering hurt, and a new sense of purpose. "And what do you believe, Father?" For a moment, Emperor Talon seemed at a loss for words, a highly unusual state for any luminary. "I believe," he said finally, "that I have failed to see what was before me. The ancient texts speak of silent ones who would come when most needed, not as aberrations, but as guides to forgotten wisdom." He paused. "I did not understand that the silence in your mind was not emptiness, but a different kind of fullness." Across the room, Ilara saw Maya watching them, concern evident in her expression. With a slight nod, Ilara reassured her friend that all was well. "I will consider the council's offer," she told her father. "But my place is here now, on Nexus Station. I've discovered that I can serve as a bridge, not just between Luminary and their past, but between our people and other species." She looked directly into his iridescent eyes. "The galaxy is changing, Father. Perhaps it's time for Lumina to change with it." Later, as the celebration wound down, Ilara and Maya stood at the great observation window, watching the nebula's swirling colors, now recognized as the visible manifestation of the repository's vast stores of knowledge. "So," Maya said, "Ambassador Ilara has a nice ring to it." Ilara's skin shifted to warm gold with flecks of azure, her expression of happiness. "Not what I expected when I was sent into exile." "Exile?" Maya grinned. "I'd call it finding your rightful place in the universe." As they stood together watching the stars, Ilara reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. All her life, she had believed herself broken, incomplete, a princess without the very quality that defined her people. Now she understood that her supposed disability had been preparing her for a unique purpose that no other luminary could fulfill. "There's an old human saying," Maya said, as if reading her thoughts. "Sometimes the thing that makes you different is the very thing that makes you indispensable." Ilara's hand found Maya's, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that crossed the boundaries between their worlds. "I believe I'm beginning to understand that," she said softly. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, and below them, Nexus Station hummed with the vibrant energy of countless species learning to bridge their differences, just as a silenced princess and a human diplomat had shown was possible.